Welcome back to the TPS podcast. TPS stands for trillions per second, named after the book. Today we'll discuss checkpoint 1, stream analysis. Time to do some packet sniffing, so let's dive right in.
Yeah, I'm genuinely thrilled to be here for this one. You can really feel the static in the air today.
You really can. It's palpable.
Right, because the energy surrounding this specific checkpoint, it's a complete departure from the groundwork we've been laying over the past few cycles.
Right, absolutely.
We are officially closing the door on the theoretical phase. The Master Lexicon is compiled. The Silicon Suture architecture has been mapped out.
It's done and dusted.
Exactly. Today, we step onto the actual execution ground. We're laying out the primary operational hack in the TPS installation wizard.
The core mission.
The objective is to understand, mechanically and practically, how to bypass the user interface of your own reality and stare directly at the raw code.
The LFG energy radiating off the server right now is it's intense.
It's off the charts.
If you've been following the repository, you saw the devlog C4 chaos pushed on Friday, February 20th, 2026, devlog 013.
A massive update.
Huge. And let me just say to everyone listening right now, you nodes out there in the mesh network, you have been incredibly patient.
So patient.
You've tracked the data stream with us through the structural overhauls, the AI Centaur audits, the endless refactoring of the legacy code. You've done the reading.
You put in the hours.
So today is the day you open your terminal, stare at that blinking cursor, and type the very first executable command. The R&D phase is over. Checkpoint 01 is officially live.
Reading through that February 20th devlog, the psychological state of the author is just fascinating to decode.
You can feel the exhaustion.
You really can. You can practically read the exhaustion between the lines, coupled with this massive wave of relief.
Because it took so long.
Right. C4 Chaos notes that when the TPS project booted up just a month prior, there was zero anticipation that the work would spiral into this massive, grand, unified theory.
It was supposed to be a quick patch.
Exactly. He and the digital synth team, Gemini, Grok, that whole AI Centaur stack, they spent weeks just tearing legacy code apart.
Trapped in a loop.
Trapped in this grueling, iterative loop of debugging. The bottleneck was always the translation layer. Taking that clunky, metaphorical legacy code from ancient agrarian societies and mapping it cleanly onto the native high-speed digital interface of the TPS protocol. It took an immense toll.
I want to push back on that a little bit, though, or at least play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay, sure.
Because reading those early chapters, you get the sense that C4 Chaos was grinding his gears, almost stubbornly refusing to push the update.
He was definitely holding out.
He explicitly says in the log, imagine rushing the rest of the work just to rewrite the whole thing from scratch later. Hard pass.
Right.
But from an agile development standpoint, why not push a beta? Why not get the minimum viable product out to the nodes and let the community patch the bugs in checkpoint 1?
Well, I mean, pushing a beta test is standard procedure when you are building a SaaS platform or a video game. If the code breaks...
the software crashes.
Exactly. The software crashes, users complain on a forum, you push a hot fix on Tuesday, and everyone moves on.
Right. No big deal.
But we have to look at the hardware we are dealing with here. The TPS protocol is executing on the biological hardware of the user.
The biochassis.
The biochassis.
Yeah.
The core white hat protocol dictates that you do not, under any circumstances, deploy untested code that could permanently brick the user's operating system.
Brick the operating system, meaning like severe psychological fallout.
Inevitably. If you release a sloppy, ambiguous mind-hacking manual, the margin for error isn't a 404 page. The margin for error is a dissociative break.
Wow.
We've analyzed the melting chassis anomalies in the archives, cases where practitioners executed legacy code without proper buffering and induced massive depersonalization.
They crashed their own default mode networks.
They absolutely did. The author's hard pass on rushing the code was an ethical imperative.
Yeah.
If the instructions for dismantling your perception of reality contain a syntax error, you trigger a psychological crisis.
That makes a lot of sense.
So the green light on checkpoint 01 signifies that the architect and the AI auditors have completely stress-tested the sequence. The load-bearing trusses are verified. It is safe to compile.
Which makes the stakes incredibly real. It's not just a philosophical thought experiment anymore. It's a verified exploit for the human nervous system.
Precisely.
So let's look at the matrix code we are actually executing. In the legacy Pali texts, this initial threshold was called Namarupa Paracheta,
which traditionally translates to defining mind and matter.
And using the Master Lexicon, we parse that into the TPS protocol as the hardware-software split. I have to admit, defining mind and matter always felt a bit floaty to me.
Very academic.
Yeah, a bit incense and cushions, but the hardware-software split, that feels clinical. It feels actionable.
Stripping away the mysticism is the entire point of the refactor. This checkpoint pinpoints the exact millisecond your internal monitor flickers.
The glitch in the matrix.
It's the moment the user stops perceiving static, solid entities. What the legacy code designated as pañati and what the TPS protocol defines as icons.
Okay.
Instead of interacting with the icon, the user begins detecting the raw data stream of voxels striking their input ports.
What's fascinating here is the shift in tone. We are taking the academic fluff, the sort of passive, serene reverence usually associated with these legacy frameworks, and replacing it with a full-blown server raid mentality.
It is aggressive.
It's very aggressive. We are no longer sitting cross-legged under a tree hoping for an insight to fall on our heads. We are actively opening the console and hacking the kernel. But it does make me wonder, are we disrespecting the original coders by stripping away their terminology?
I would argue we are finally honoring their actual operational intent.
Yes.
Think about the monks who originally compiled the Abhidhamma. They weren't writing poetry. They weren't philosophizing about the cosmos in the dark. They were the world's first neurohackers.
They were essentially sitting in caves hacking their own brains.
Yes. They isolated themselves in caves, systematically eliminated external network interference, and monitored the raw data stream of their own cognition with microscopic, terrifying precision.
They mapped the source code.
They mapped the source code of human consciousness over 2 millennia before we even invented the vocabulary of pixels, refresh rates, or bandwidth.
That is wild.
They were engineers limited by an agrarian lexicon. We are just migrating their repository to a modern stack.
We're taking their cave findings and pushing them to GitHub. It's the ultimate legacy system update. So how do we actually run this update? How do we execute the hack on our own senses?
Okay, to initiate.
Because conceptually, the hardware-software split makes sense. But experientially, I'm still walking around in a world that feels very solid.
Right. To initiate the hack, we first have to map the architecture of the illusion we are currently running. Every single node listening to this right now is experiencing reality as a fully rendered, highly optimized website.
Okay, the website analogy, I love this.
When you navigate to a complex web page, your browser doesn't show you the millions of lines of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and backend database queries. It hides the chaos.
Because that would be overwhelming.
Totally overwhelming. It presents a cohesive interface. You see a pristine buy button. You see a smooth profile picture. It makes sense and allows for immediate frictionless interaction.
The browser compiles all that messy underlying code into a beautiful, solid-looking noun. I don't need to know how the database query works to click Add to Cart. I just need the button to be there.
And your brain is running the exact same optimization script. But checkpoint 1, stream analysis, demands that you open Wireshark on your own neurobiology.
A network protocol analyzer for the brain.
Exactly. You need to intercept and read the pure, raw data packets traveling across your sensory network before the brain's rendering engine turns them into a recognizable, solid noun. You have to become a packet sniffer for your own reality.
Okay, let's unpack this. How do we actually intercept the packets? If I'm a node trying to run this, where do I plug in the analyzer?
The devlog instructs us to locate our input ports. The input ports correspond to the legacy system's sense doors, the ocular, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, and somatic channels, plus the cognitive processor itself, the mind.
So all the senses.
All of them. Stream analysis requires intercepting the raw telemetry hitting these physical interfaces. We aren't talking about seeing a car or feeling a breeze.
We're going deeper than that.
Much deeper. We are talking about isolating pure thermal shifts, pure atmospheric pressure, pure kinetic vibration, and raw photon strikes.
Wow.
You have to intercept this telemetry at the exact microsecond it impacts the biochassis before the graphical user interface of your mind renders it into a conceptual object.
Let's pull this out of the abstract and do a live execution right now.
Let's do it.
If you are listening to this, assuming you aren't driving a car or operating heavy machinery, I want you to target an object in your immediate environment. It could be your hand, a microphone, the coffee cup on your desk. Just look at it.
Just observe it.
Notice how instantly, with zero latency, your brain serves up the compressed file. It hands you a noun. It attaches a history, a label, and a utility function to that geometry.
It's instantaneous.
Right. If you look at your hand, the GUI immediately displays, that is my hand. It has 5 fingers. It types on keyboards. It belongs to me.
That is the fully rendered website you're looking at. The illusion of solidity is functioning perfectly. The challenge now is to decompress that file in real time.
So how do we do that?
Keep targeting that same object, but force your awareness to drop underneath the conceptual label. Target the raw sensation. If you are looking at your hand, close your eyes.
Okay, I'm doing it.
Delete the spatial geometry. Delete the visual image of fingers and a palm. Drop your processing power entirely into the physical space that object occupies. What is the actual data you are receiving?
Okay, doing this live. When I drop the spatial geometry, the noun completely shatters. I don't feel a hand anymore.
What do you feel?
I feel a vibrating cloud. There's a thrumming pulse, which I guess is cardiovascular data. There's the ambient thermal data of the room interacting with the boundary layer of the skin.
Exactly.
There's a dense area of pressure where my forearm is resting against the edge of the desk, but none of it is shaped like a hand. It's just a localized storm of data points.
You are successfully deconstructing the noun into verbs. The static object doesn't exist at the hardware level. You are experiencing a dynamic, rapidly flickering stream of data events.
It's just data.
Now open your eyes and look at the microphone.
Okay.
Override the rendering engine. Refuse to see a microphone.
Yeah.
Look at the raw input. A cylindrical arrangement of gray pixels, a sharp reflection of white light, a gradient shadow. You are isolating the photons hitting your optic nerve before the brain's labeling script executes and slaps the word microphone over the raw feed.
Wait, if I walk around refusing to compile the data, aren't I just going to stumble through life like a zombie?
No, because...
I mean, if I don't compile the data of a red light while I'm driving and I just see it as a spherical bloom of red photons, I'm going to cause a massive traffic accident. How is this viable? It sounds like we are actively disabling our own pattern recognition software, which evolved to keep us alive.
That is a critical distinction, and is why this is an operational hack, not a permanent hardware modification. You don't run stream analysis while you are navigating a four-way intersection.
Good to know.
Think of it like taking your car into the shop and running a deep diagnostic on the engine. You put the car on blocks, you hook up the sensors, and you analyze the fuel injection at a micro level. You don't do that while merging onto the highway at 70 miles per hour.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
When you sit down to execute checkpoint 1, you are taking the biochassis offline. You are in a controlled server maintenance mode. The goal is to see the raw data in a controlled environment so that when you go back online, you understand the fundamental nature of the interface.
You still stop at the red light.
Exactly. You still stop at the red light, but you know the red light is a rendered icon, not an absolute reality.
Okay, that clarifies the safety protocol. So when we are in this controlled environment, we follow the ultimate bumper sticker directive of the entire TPS project. In the checkpoint 1 devlog, C for chaos gives us the 4-step execution sequence.
Step 1.
Step 1, sit down. Step 2, locate the input ports. Step 3, intercept the data. Step 4, don't compile.
Don't compile is the linchpin of the entire system architecture. In computer science, a compiler translates human-readable source code into executable machine code. Within the human operating system, compiling means taking that raw telemetry, the vibration, the photon strike, the pressure, and feeding it through the labeling protocol.
Let me pull up the lexicon mapping for the labeling protocol. The legacy term is sanya, commonly translated as perception, but the TPS definition translates it as pattern recognition.
Right.
It's the subroutine that identifies the object. It says that cluster of data is red, or that vibrating mass is a car.
To execute the don't compile command means you must explicitly interrupt the sanya subroutine. You block the mind from appending the concept onto the raw data. The data must remain strictly read-only.
Strictly read-only.
The absolute microsecond you label that vibrating cloud of temperature and pressure as my hand, the compilation is finished. The malware has executed. You have abandoned the raw data stream and have been pulled back into the simulation's user interface.
It's a terrifyingly narrow tightrope to walk. The moment you name it, you lose it.
You lose the raw stream.
Yes, but let's zoom out for a second. What are the actual implications of realizing that nouns are lies and that everything is fundamentally a verb? Because initially, realizing that you, the solid, permanent entity with a name, a career, and a personality, is just a localized storm of data processes. It feels like psychological freefall. You are a verb pretending to be a noun.
It induces vertigo at first because the ego script relies on the illusion of noun status to survive. But crossing that threshold provides profound architectural distance.
Architectural distance, I like that.
When you viscerally understand that the reality you inhabit is a high-speed rendering of packets, you cease identifying with every single glitch in the system. A buffering error in the mind doesn't mean I am broken. It just means there is latency in the network.
Wow.
The U is revealed as a localized loading icon. But to grasp the sheer magnitude of this rendering process, we have to pop the hood on the physics engine of the simulation itself. We need to look at the granularity of reality.
Which brings us to the core metric of the framework, trillions per second. I have been waiting to tear into this.
It's the big one.
Trillions per second sounds like the title of a cyberpunk thriller, but it is actually the most literal, hardcore technical specification in the entire manual. It's not poetry, it's a measurement.
It is the absolute clock speed of reality. The TPS framework, which ports its physics engine directly from the ancient Apatama, posits that the physical universe is not a continuous, solid environment. Reality does not flow like molasses.
It's not smooth.
It is a discrete time rendering. The legacy framework identified this through the concept of kalapas. Kalapas were defined as the smallest fundamental units of matter and mind. Subatomic data points that flash into existence, persist for a microsecond, and vanish trillions of times a second.
It's the ultimate frame rate. Let's use the video stream analogy because it makes this so visceral.
Okay.
Imagine you are streaming a massive battle sequence on Netflix in 4K. There's a massive explosion on screen. To your eye, it looks completely fluid. The fire rolls, the debris flies, it looks like a continuous, terrifyingly real event. But if you hit the spacebar and pause the playback right in the middle of the fireball, the illusion collapses. You don't have a solid object made of fire on your screen. You have a single static data frame made of millions of colored pixels.
And if you were to manually advance that video file, one single frame at a time, taking a full second between each frame, the illusion of motion is entirely annihilated. You see the static image, then you see the black screen between the frames. The gap.
The black frames.
The TPS architecture asserts that reality itself, the room you are sitting in, the body you occupy, the thoughts you are having, is rendering exactly like this, just at an incomprehensibly accelerated speed. Trillions of frames per second.
But my everyday experience screams that this is false. I'm knocking on my wooden desk right now. It is solid. It doesn't flicker. My coffee cup doesn't strobe out of existence when I look away. If reality is flashing on and off trillions of times a second, why doesn't it look like a broken neon sign?
Because your biological hardware has evolved a highly sophisticated smoothing algorithm. The brain generates motion blur to ensure your survival.
Motion blur.
Consider the evolutionary bandwidth cost. If your visual cortex was constantly overwhelmed by the raw strobe light effect of quantum reality blinking in and out of the void, your processor would stall. You wouldn't be able to track a predator, forage for food, or reproduce.
You'd just be paralyzed by the data.
Completely. The continuous solid rendering is a biological survival feature. It is a highly compressed, low-resolution summary of the actual quantum events striking the input ports. Your brain caches the data to save RAM.
So the million-dollar operational question is, how do we hack our own hardware to bypass the smoothing algorithm? How do we break the motion blur and see the black frames? Because I can't just tell my brain, hey, stop rendering. It doesn't listen.
You had to overclock the sensor array.
Yeah.
This is where the framework graduates from passive philosophical observation to aggressive system hacking.
Overclocking.
To perceive the black frames between the flashes of reality, you cannot operate at your default, relaxed clock speed. You have to drive the biological hardware, your raw attention, to its maximum stable frequency.
Checking the lexicon again. The legacy term here is samadhi, or jhana, which is almost universally translated in the West as concentration, which always sounded to me like trying really hard on a math test.
It's a terrible translation.
It really is. But the TPS definition is completely different. CPU frequency boost.
Concentration implies a static grip on an object. CPU frequency boost implies a massive increase in processing cycles. The mechanic here is critical to understand. We are carbon-based life forms. We cannot physically match the simulation's native speed of trillions per second.
Right, our biology limits us.
That is biologically impossible. Instead, we increase our sampling rate. We log the incoming sensory hits so rapidly that we create a perceptual strobe effect. In signal processing, this is known as aliasing.
Aliasing, yes. Like when you are driving down the highway and you look at the wheels of the car next to you, they're spinning at 70 miles per hour, but suddenly the hubcaps look like they are spinning backwards or they just freeze completely still. Your eye's frame rate is phase locking with the rotation of the wheel.
That is the exact mechanical exploit. By artificially spiking your sampling rate, you phase lock your observer module to the incoming data stream. You disrupt the brain's ability to apply motion blur, and the seemingly solid flux freezes into discrete, observable frames. You finally perceive the matrix code.
But let's be brutally honest about what it takes to achieve that sampling rate. The devlog references the high-speed noting technique, which is heavily utilized in the Mahasi-Sayadaw lineage and documented extensively by hardcore practitioners like Daniel Ingram.
A very intense technique.
Extremely.
Yeah.
The instruction is to actively log sensory data 1 to 10 times per second. Ping, 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 ping. Relentlessly tagging every microsensation.
Yeah.
I've tried this. I sat on my cushion, aimed for 5 notes a second, and within 10 minutes I had a migraine. I got distracted by an itch on my nose, got frustrated, and the whole system crashed. C4 Chaos admits in his interview logs that this method is incredibly taxing. It feels like you are hyperventilating with your brain.
It requires a colossal expenditure of cognitive RAM, and the resulting fatigue is very real. The default user space is fundamentally lazy. It relies on caching and heuristics to save energy.
The path of least resistance.
Exactly. Forcing your system to render raw, uncompressed packets in real time, bypassing the cache, requires a massive, sustained surge of processing power. It is an unnatural state for the biochassis, which is why the resistance, the headaches, the frustration is so immediate.
Okay, let's say a node pushes through the resistance. I overclock my attention, I phase lock to the stream, the motion blur drops, and suddenly the solid world around me shatters into a flickering river of subatomic data.
You're in the stream.
What am I actually looking for in the code? What are the diagnostics that tell me I've breached the kernel?
Once you achieve stream analysis and successfully overclock the system, you must deploy the 3 signatures. These are the diagnostic tools that verify you have penetrated the user interface and reached the kernel level of the simulation.
The 3 signatures.
If you don't see these 3 signatures, you are still looking at the website, not the code. In the legacy architecture, these were known as the 3 characteristics of existence: Anika, Dukkha, and Anatta.
The holy trinity of the TPS diagnostic. We need to spend serious time on each of these because the refactor here is brilliant. Let's start with number 1. Anika. The legacy translation is impermanence. Everything changes, nothing lasts, we've all heard it. It's a very poetic, slightly depressing concept. But the TPS translation is the flux.
Translating it as impermanence allows the mind to think in terms of years or days. My car will rust eventually. I will get old eventually. That is macro impermanence.
Right.
The flux is micro volatility. It is the real-time observation of the data flickering at the subatomic level. It is the visceral realization that no file in the system is static. Everything you experience is the active execution of a temporary process.
Constant execution.
The very millisecond you attempt to save the file, to hold on to a pleasant sensation or freeze a moment in time, the data has already moved on. The frame has passed.
It's like trying to grab a handful of water from a fire hose, which leads perfectly into signature number 2, Dukkha. The legacy translation is suffering or dissatisfaction. The TPS translation, system latency.
This specific translation represents perhaps the most profound paradigm shift in the entire project. In the legacy view, suffering is often interpreted as a cosmic punishment, a moral failing, or a tragic flaw of the human condition.
Yeah, heavy stuff.
TPS frames it purely as a mechanical error. System latency is the friction generated when your operating system attempts to hold on to a data frame that has already passed, or when it tries to force delete a frame it doesn't want to process.
But let me interrupt here because this can sound incredibly cold. If someone is going through a devastating breakup or dealing with chronic physical pain, telling them they are just experiencing system latency sounds dismissive. How does this mechanical view actually map to deep human trauma?
It is clinical, but it is precisely that clinical distance that provides the escape hatch. Let's look at the mechanics of the heartbreak. The actual event, the painful conversation, the closing of the door, is a data packet that struck the input ports and immediately vanished into the flux.
The data is gone.
The data is gone. But the mind, the operating system, refuses to accept the strictly read-only nature of the universe. It tries to write over the stream. It re-renders the memory of the event in a loop, burning immense CPU cycles trying to change a past frame or treading a future frame.
The loop is the problem.
This massive processing discrepancy, the thrashing between reality A, where the data is gone, and simulation B, where the mind is obsessively rendering it, generates intense psychological heat. You experience that heat emotionally as grief, anxiety, or suffering. The pain is real, but the suffering is a buffering error.
The mismatch between the read-only reality and the right attempt of the ego, that is staggering. Okay, the final signature, number 3.
Anatta.
The legacy translation, non-self. The The TPS translation, the null pointer.
The null pointer is the ultimate diagnostic confirmation, and it is the most difficult to process. In computer science, a pointer is a variable that stores the memory address of another value. A null pointer points to nothing. It is an empty address.
An empty address.
When you observe the data stream at maximum clock speed, you realize that the concept of self is nothing more than a localized loading icon. It is an empty variable pointing to a memory address that contains no permanent data.
So if there is no permanent data, why do I feel like me?
Because of the delay. The self script always boots up after the data event has occurred. Let's say a packet of physical pain hits the somatic input port. The raw data registers instantly. But a millisecond later, the malware script boots up, analyzes the data, and broadcasts the message, "I am in pain."
I see.
The observer catches the brain, looking for the central command center, looking for the eye that is experiencing the pain, and it finds nothing but empty space. The eye is just a post hoc narrative stitched together by the labeling protocol.
This perfectly tees up the kazoo player analogy from the source text. I absolutely have to bring this up because it highlights the utter absurdity of our default state.
It's my favorite analogy.
Imagine the universe, the grand scope of the flux, as an incredibly complex, high-speed jazz symphony. It is roaring along at trillions of beats per second. It is flawless, chaotic, unstoppable, and breathtaking. And then there is your conscious mind, the self-rootkit.
The kazoo player.
You are a guy standing dead center in the middle of this massive orchestra, blowing frantically into a cheap plastic kazoo, desperately trying to play along and dictate the tempo of the symphony.
It's a brilliant, slightly humiliating visualization. The kazoo player is the ultimate resource hog. We are burning 99% of our available CPU cycles trying to control an uncontrollable read-only data stream.
It's exhausting.
The sheer effort of blowing into the kazoo, trying to freeze the river of data, trying to write over the read-only file is what exhausts us. It's the primary source of all our systemic drag.
So the objective is obvious. Drop the kazoo. Just stop playing. But executing that objective brings us to the most critical warning in the entire manual. Because as the logs make painfully clear, once you start messing around with the console commands of your own reality, things can get very weird very fast. The hardcore ethos and the danger of the dev tools.
The hardcore ethos module serves as the ultimate liability disclaimer for the TPS project. It specifically targets the theory junkie trap. The author is very transparent in the logs, admitting that he himself fell into this trap during development.
The trap is the delusion that because you have memorized the schematics of the map, you have automatically teleported to the destination.
Exactly.
Oh, so common. You can memorize the entire Master Lexicon. You can perfectly articulate the quad-core kernel architecture of the Silicon Sutra. You can debate the microphysics of a voxel versus a kalapa on Reddit for hours. And you can still be running the malware. You are still the guy tooting the kazoo. You just have fancier, more technical stickers on your kazoo.
If you are sitting on your cushion or walking down the street attempting stream analysis, and your internal monologue is chattering away, okay, am I hitting checkpoint 1 right now? Is this the flux? Am I detecting the null pointer? I think I just saw a kalapa.
You're not doing it.
You are not looking at the ground. You are staring at the map. You are actively compiling code. You must process the raw data stream, not your ideas about the data stream. TPS translates the old then proverb perfectly here. Don't eat the menu, eat the food.
And this warning isn't just philosophical gatekeeping. It's a practical safety protocol for operating the biochassis. I want to look at the devlog from March 1st, 2026, titled Becoming Fire.
Ah, yes.
It is arguably one of the most intense hardcore documents in the repository. C4 Chaos is literally bedridden. His biochassis is infected with a severe biological virus running a high fever, and instead of taking some NyQuil, turning off the lights and sleeping it off, he decides to use his own fever as a live fire stress test for the protocol.
It is a stunning demonstration of the system's capabilities. He leverages the overclocking technique to hack his own biological fever. Normally, the operating system compiles the sensation of a fever into the terrifying, suffering-laden noun of, I am sick, my body is burning, I am in danger.
The panic response.
Right. C for Chaos intercepts that compilation. He shatters the sensation of physical combustion down into neutral microscopic data packets. He uses stream analysis to decouple the raw telemetry of heat, sweat, and vibration from the survival GUI that generates the panic.
He essentially matrix dodged his own immune response. He broke the concept of fire down into subatomic data points. It's incredible. But immediately after documenting this godlike ability to hack his own pain receptors, he issues the fire extinguisher warning. And this is vital for any node listening who wants to go out and immediately try to stream analyze their next migraine.
The author is explicit. A fire extinguisher is a very good thing to have on the wall in an emergency, but you do not go walking around your house actively looking for a fire or starting a fire just so you can use the cool extinguisher. This directly addresses the black hat trap.
The black hat trap. We need to unpack this because it sounds like we're venturing into the dark web of contemplative practice. What makes a practitioner a black hat?
Accessing these dev mode console commands is deeply, intoxicatingly seductive. When you achieve the ability to dissolve physical pain into neutral data, or when you perceive the high-frequency vibrations of the flux, your system generates intense energetic states. In the legacy texts, these intermediate milestones are known as the arising and passing away, or the realm of the corruptions of insight.
Corruptions of insight.
You experience profound bliss. You see fractal visions. You feel a sense of absolute invincibility. You feel like a wizard.
God mode. You unlock God mode.
Precisely the feeling. But if you park your awareness there, if you start hacking the system purely to enjoy the dev tools, you cross over into a black hat operator. You are utilizing the exploit to inflate the self-rootkit, not to delete it.
So the ego just grabs the hack.
The ego claims the hack. You write a new, far more insidious ego narrative. Look at me. I am a master hacker of reality. I am superior to the baseline nodes. The objective of the white hat operator is not to play with the server logs. It is not to become a psychic wizard or bliss junkie. The objective is to reach the kernel. The objective is absolute zero lag.
And the manual is very clear. If you get caught in God mode, it will corrupt your save file. Because the bliss always fades, the dev tools eventually get revoked by the system. And if your entire identity, your new shiny noun, was built on being a spiritual hacker wizard, you crash unimaginably hard.
You plunge into the defrag.
You plunge into what the map calls the defrag, which is a terrifying extended sequence of system instability and psychological dread. You have to keep moving. You have to keep pushing your awareness through the data stream without getting attached to the cool matrix glitches.
Which perfectly illustrates the structural architecture of the path itself. It is vital to understand the recursive loop. Checkpoint 1, stream analysis, is not the first step on a linear video game journey where you hit checkpoint 6, defeat the final boss, and roll the credits. The architecture is a spiral.
Right, there is no game over, you win screen. The roadmap explicitly outlines the concept of system versioning. When a node successfully navigates through all 6 checkpoints for the very first time, they achieve what the legacy code called stream entry. In TPS terminology, you upgrade from a baseline noob running the default malware to a stream winner. You secure root access v1.0.
A permanent save point is created. The system runs a changelog diagnostic to verify which specific malware files, which identity scripts were permanently deleted from the registry. But the critical point is what happens after the reboot. The moment that v1.0 system reboot finishes, you do not retire to a digital beach.
The work isn't done.
The optimization loop immediately reinitializes. You find yourself right back at checkpoint 1, performing stream analysis all over again, but this time on a vastly deeper, more subtle level of the operating system. You have to patch deeper driver issues to reach v2.0, then v3.0, and finally v4.0, where the system runs at absolute zero lag until the biological hardware eventually fails.
It is a relentless, uncompromising optimization cycle. So we need to synthesize this. We've covered an immense amount of ground today. We've gone from the raw exhaustion in the devlogs to packet sniffing the sense stores, to the trillions per second frame rate, to the danger of the black hat trap. For the listener right now, how do they actually apply this architectural distance to their immediate reality?
Synthesizing the hack comes down to recognizing the ultimate partitioning of hardware and software in your daily life. By viscerally realizing that the website of your daily reality is just a heavily compressed rendering of high-speed data packets, you gain the ability to step back from the interface.
The distance.
The distance. You stop identifying with every single glitch, every mood swing, every buffering error. When you experience anxiety, you don't boot up the rootkit and say, I am an anxious person. You observe the telemetry and say, the system is currently logging a high volume of erratic thermal and kinetic data at the somatic input ports. You become the admin observing the system rather than the glitch crashing the system.
You become the admin, not the glitch. I want every node listening to take this directly into their day. The very next time you feel stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed by a noun, whether that noun is a massive project deadline, an angry email from your boss, a fight with your partner, or even just physical tension in your jaw, try deconstructing it into verbs.
Locate the input ports.
Locate the input ports. What is the actual raw data hitting your sensors? Sniff the packets. Is it a tightening in the chest? Is it a flush of heat in the face? Is it a shallow, rapid breath pattern? Isolate that telemetry. Drop the conceptual label. Don't compile the file. Drop the latency.
If you can maintain that read-only state, even for a few seconds, if you can simply log the data packets without trying to write a response, without trying to force delete the uncomfortable experience, the friction disappears. The system stabilizes. The heat dissipates into the flux.
The repository is live. The instructions are clear. The code has been vetted by the AI centaurs and stress-tested in the biochassis of the developers. So I leave you with this final, provocative challenge. Look at the wall in front of you right now, or the steering wheel under your hands, or the train window you are staring out of. Are you compiling this reality right now, or are you actually seeing it? Are you blindly running the self-script, letting the malware consume your CPU, or are you running stream analysis? The choice to open the terminal and execute the command is entirely yours.
See you in the flux.
See you in the flux.